Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today talking about this awesome piece of knife making gear, the hydraulic forge press. So this right here, yep, it's a hammer. Now, swinging this thing looks pretty cool. You watch Forged in Fire and everybody's swinging these things. It's super cool. So if you're shaping a knife, making a pair of tongs, hey, it's a great tool. But the truth is there are some practical limits to what you can do with muscle power, especially if you want to make Damascus steel. So that's where this big hog comes in. It's a hydraulic forge press. What it does is substitute for the muscle power that you have to use to drive a hammer like this. Now, right from the jump, quick distinction, this is not a power hammer, it's a press, totally different animal. Same basic purpose, but mechanically not at all the same. So more on that later. Now, before I tell you why you might or might not want one of these, let's break down what we got here. The press consists of a frame, that's this right here. It's got a hydraulic ram, which is hiding in the back. It drives this right here. You've got dies that actually touch whatever it is that you're squashing. You've got a pump down here. And you've got a reservoir of hydraulic fluid, which is actually contained in the frame itself in this particular model. So these removable dies are like the face of the hammer. Quickly, let's show it in operation. Now, this is a 25-ton press, meaning it applies about 50,000 pounds of force. So what you do is you're gonna heat up the material in a forge, you're gonna stick it in between these two dies right here, and then you press this foot pedal down here, and this just moves right down and squashes whatever it is that you want it to squash. You release the foot pedal and it goes back up. So this particular model has a two-stage pump, meaning that you can go slow or you can go even slower. Slow, fast. So how are presses distinguished from each other? Basically by the force that they can apply, which is typically measured in tons, as I said, and by the type of frame. So this is an H frame, two side members and the business end in the middle, but you'll also see C frames, which have the entire side open and a big top on it like that. So H-frames, I'd say, are mechanically superior in the sense that they're going to apply pressure right smack down the middle, and you've got support on both sides. So you can safely apply more force, and they're a little more mechanically stable. There's no racking that might cause this thing to twist or move around. C-frames, on the other hand, are a lot more versatile and easy to use because you can get into this space here where the dies are and go basically 180 degrees around it, which is super handy. Now it's going to take a little more steel to make a durable C-frame, which adds up to more expense, but the problem with an H-frame like this is, like I said, you're limited in how you can move around it. This particular model is a 25-ton model, which is probably the most popular size. There are 12-ton models out there, 50 tons, but the 24, 25-ton area is probably where most of these are going to land. And that's a reasonably comfortable range for most of the things that you're going to be doing in knife making. Honestly, would I like to have 50? Sure, wouldn't mind it. Okay, so what's the most important use of a hydraulic forge press? Hands down, making Damascus steel. Damascus is made by piling up a bunch of pieces of steel and then squashing it together so that they weld together in high heat. Now, this works best when you can quickly move from your forge to the squashing point there and apply even pressure to the billet of steel. You can do it a lot of other ways. You can tap it all together by hand. You can use a power hammer, but the press is really a super handy way of doing it. So that's exactly the press's sweet spot here. Unlike hand hammering or power hammers, which can dislodge layers from the stack of steel and mess up the weld, press is just going to put nice even pressure on there very quickly and really set that weld nicely. And that adds up to better welds, better Damascus, more even patterns, just a lot of things line up nicer that way. So let's talk about these right here, dies. The most normal dies are what we call flatting dies, or sometimes just forging dies. They're basically just what they look like. There's just a flat surface on here. They squash together, good to go. They're your workhorse, squaring things, flattening things, evening stuff up, smashing Damascus billets, even drawing things out. They work okay for that. After that, you find a whole lot of specialty dies. The most common is probably going to be a drawing die, which draws things out, has a slightly domed surface. And then there are all kinds of things for making ladder patterns and raindrop patterns, and just there's an infinite number of purposes that you can do. You can make stripping dies for making eyes of hammers. I mean, there's no end to the kind of dies that you can put in there. And that's the beauty of making them removable like that. And you know, it's easy to do it. So on a power hammer, typically they're dovetailed in. It takes a little work to get them in and out. This you can swap in and out super fast. So does every knife maker need one of these? Absolutely not. The most important justification for making them is Damascus. Like I said, if you're not planning on making Damascus, or if you're not forging, or if you're not, you know, there's really no need to have one at all. They're nice for speeding up various aspects of forging blades and drawing out material and stuff like that, but you know, they really just shine the most on Damascus. Hammers are actually more useful for some of those other forging type tasks. Many are the knife makers who've tried Damascus making by hand, and many are the number who have failed. You can do it. I think almost every knife maker, myself included, gets out there and says, oh, I bet we can do this with a hammer. I even got a bunch of guys to come in and do it like the Japanese guys do, where you have 3 guys hammering at the same time. If you really want to make Damascus, you're going to have to get a machine. That's just the way it is, and this is the machine to get. So let's say you're thinking about buying a hydraulic forge press. What are some things to keep in mind? So first, I think I've made the general justification for having one. Most important is if you want to make Damascus. If you don't, there's probably no need to have one. But first, let's talk about the difference between power hammers and presses. Why would you want to buy this as opposed to a power hammer? I mean, honestly, some of it just plain old taste, but beyond that, the advantages of the press are, first, bang for the buck. You can just, you know, you get a lot more mojo, a lot more ability to squash stuff per dollar that you spend with a press than you do with a power hammer. So a 25-ish ton press like this is typically going to run upward of $3 grand, and sometimes you can spend more like 7 or 8, but that's probably roughly where it's going to max out for a machine with this kind of power. Power hammers, on the other hand, you can spend almost infinite amounts of money on. So another thing is that it's generally easier to, like I said, it's easier to change these dies on most presses as opposed to most power hammers. And you know, when you're in the middle of doing things, you're always switching between drawing material, flattening material, especially when you're making Damascus, and then things you might want to do like ladder patterns that require yet another die. So you might swap those out a lot. Also, I would say that these are a little bit less annoying to your neighbors if you're in some kind of reasonably close proximity to your neighbors than power hammers. But to me, that's really about where the advantage is in. And even there, I mean, these are pretty noisy. That pump is a really annoying sound. I mean, that carries a little bit in a suburban neighborhood. Anyway, the first giant advantage of the hammer is that the dies on the hammer are only in contact with the work for the moment that it reaches the bottom of its travel, and then they pop right back up. And what that means is that there's much less heat transfer in the process of smashing things on a hammer than there is in a press, where the dies press in on the work for a fairly long period of time in the grand scheme of things and just suck out a lot of heat. You can really do a lot of manipulation of something with a power hammer in one heat. Not so much with a press. You got to heat things a bunch of times and that slows you down. Also, power hammers are invariably C-type machines, which means that you can get around and put bigger and longer and more complicated things into the jaws without smacking into the machine itself. So any C-frame type design is going to be a huge advantage if you're a blacksmith as opposed to a knife maker. Knife makers can kind of work in this little area most of the time, but if you're doing architectural blacksmithing or sculptural blacksmithing or something like that where you're using a lot of large pieces of metal, this is not going to make you happy. So let's put aside the power hammer thing. Second issue is just cost. Look, you can save some money by dropping down to 12 tons, but personally, I mean, honestly, I haven't used 12-ton presses very extensively, but you know, there's not a huge jump from 12 tons to 24 tons. The basic machine is kind of the same. You're just putting a bigger ram and a bigger pump in there. It's not that there's no difference, but to me, the additional money is worth it if you can, you know, pull the scratch together to get at least a 24, 25 ton one. That's what I would do. So who makes presses? Well, one of the most popular is this model right here. This is the Uncle Al press. It's made by Riverside Machine. I have literally done nothing to it but swap out this switch. No, that's really about it. So pretty durable machine. Coal Iron Works in Ohio makes a bunch of pretty cool presses. I think Big Blue makes one, or maybe a couple models, I'm not really sure. And there's some other ones. Which one would I recommend? Sorry, I don't do that. You know, I'm happy with this. It's 25 years old and going strong, so that tells you something, but you know, a lot of other nice presses out there. Another issue is the make or buy issue. That is, do you want to buy it for, you know, fully made or make one yourself? Some of the folks will actually sell you one, and you know, they'll sell you all the parts, and then you basically just have to weld it together. If you can weld competently, that might save you some money. Honestly, I looked at making one from scratch back in the day. Now, this was 25 years ago, but I mean, it was going to cost me something like $300 less than buying this machine did. I mean, for the amount of effort that it would require to make one of these as a one-off, it didn't make any sense to me at all. You know, unless you're just doing it to, you know, as a fun exercise or whatever, I would look very hard at buying one fully made rather than assembling it. Another thing a lot of people think about is buying a log splitter and converting it into a press. Usually log splitters are not that powerful, but also the frames are just not very strong. I've heard some people who have done it and were not super happy. I keep hearing that people do it and end up having to, you know, just not being able to use it that much. But, you know, full disclosure, I've never done it myself. I haven't used one myself, so I can't give you a, you know, fully formed opinion on it, but, you know, what I hear through the grapevine is not the world's greatest idea. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll be back with more tools for the knife maker in the next few weeks. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and make sure that you click on that bell so you get notified of all the latest videos. Want to buy a knife from me? Check out my modern blades at tacticsarmory.com. Digging the channel? You can support our video making efforts on Patreon. You know, I've been banging away on these videos for like 10 years, so I hope you'll show some love for all that hard work. Link in the cards and descriptions. Finally, if you're interested in making Japanese swords, check out my full line of Japanese sword videos where I show how to forge Japanese swords as well as how to polish them and how to make fittings, handles, and scabbards. WalterSorrellsBlades.com.